Okay, I'm going to be doing a video. I may have some interruptions, but I'm going to be reading Barne's commentary. So I'm going to be doing it at study light for Genesis 1. So we'll read it with the English Standard Version. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Section 1, the creation, the absolute creation. The head part, beginning of a thing and point of time, Genesis 10:10. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel and Erech and Akkad and Calneh in the land of Shinar. Or value Proverbs 1:7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Its opposite is Isaiah 46:10, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times things which had not been done, saying, my purpose will be established and I will accomplish all my good pleasure. In the beginning, it's always used in reference to time. Here only is it taken absolutely. Bara, create, give being to something new. It always has God for its subject. Its object may be anything. Matter, Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Animal life, Genesis 1:21. God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarmed after their kind, and every winged bird after its kind, and God saw that it was good. Spiritual life, Genesis 1:27. God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. Hence, creation is not confined to a single point of time. Whenever anything absolutely new that is not involved in anything previously extant is called into existence, there is creation. Numbers 16:30. But if the Lord brings about an entirely new thing in the ground, opens its mouth and swallows them alive with all that is theirs, and they descend alive into Sheol, then you have understood that these men have spurned the Lord. Anything or event may also be said to be created by him who created the whole system of nature to which it belongs. Malachi 2:10. Do we not all have one Father? Has not one God created us? Why do we deal treacherously against his brothers so as to profane the covenant of our fathers? The verb in its simple form occurs 48 times, of which 11 are in Genesis 14, the whole Pentateuch, and 21 in Isaiah, and always in one sense. Elohim, God. The noun Eloha is found in Hebrew scriptures 57 times in the singular, of which 2 are in Deuteronomy and 41 in the book of Job, and about 3,000 in the plural, of which 17 are in Job. The Chaldee form Elah occurs about 74 times in the singular and 10 in the plural. The Hebrew letter H is proved to be radical not only by bearing mapik, but also by keeping its ground before a formative ending. The Arabic verb with the same radical seems rather to borrow from it than to lend the meaning Koloet worshipped, which it sometimes has. The root probably means to be lasting, binding, firm, strong. Hence, the noun means the everlasting and the plural of the eternal powers. It is correctly rendered God the name of the eternal and supreme being in our language, which perhaps originally meant Lord or ruler. And like this, it is a common or appellative noun. This is evinced by its direct use and indirect applications. Its direct use is either proper or improper according to the object to which it is applied. Every instance of its proper use manifestly determines its meaning to be eternal, the Almighty, who is himself without beginning, and has within himself the power of causing other things, personal and impersonal, to be, and on this event is the sole object of reverence and primary obedience to his intelligent creation. Its improper use arose from the lapse of man to false notions of the object of worship. Many real or imaginary beings came to be regarded as possessed of the attributes, and therefore entitled to the reverence belonging to deity, and were in consequence called gods by their mistaken votaries, and by others who had occasion to speak of them. This usage at once proves to be a common noun and corroborates its proper meaning. When thus employed, however, it immediately loses most of its inherent grandeur and sometimes dwindles down to the bare notion of the supernatural or the extra mundane. And this merit seems to be applied by the witch of Endor to the unexpected apparition that presented itself to her, 1 Samuel 28:3. The king said to her, do not be afraid, but what do you see? And the woman said to Saul, I see a divine being coming up out of the earth. Its indirect applications point with equal steadiness to this primary and fundamental meaning. Thus it is employed in a relative and well-defined sense to denote one appointed of God to stand in a certain divine relation to another. This relation is that of authoritative revealer or administrator of the will of God. Thus we are told, John 10:34, Jesus answered them, has it not been written here, I said you are gods, that he called them gods to whom the word of God came. Thus Moses became related to Aaron as God to his prophet, Exodus 4:16. Moreover, he shall speak for you to the people, and he will be as a mouth for you, and you will be as a God to him, and to Pharaoh as God to his creature, Exodus 7:1. Then the Lord said to Moses, see, I make you as God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be your prophet. Accordingly, in Psalm 82:6, I said you are gods, and all of you are sons of the Most High. We find this principle generalized. I'd say gods are you, and sons of the highest are all of you. Here the divine authority vested in Moses expressly recognized in those who sit, and Moses sees judges for God. Exercised the function of God among the people, and so were in God's stead to them. Man indeed was originally adapted for ruling, being made in the image of God and commanded to have dominion over the inferior creatures. The parent also is instead of God in some respect to his children, and the sovereign holds the relation of patriarch to his subjects. Still, however, we are not fully warranted in translating Elohim judges in Exodus 21:6. And his master shall bring him to God, then he shall bring him to the door or to the doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him permanently. Exodus 22:7 to 8. If a man gives his neighbor money or goods to keep for him, and is stolen from the man's house, if the thief is caught, he shall pay double. If the thief is not caught, then the owner of the house shall appear before the judges to determine whether he laid his hands on his neighbor's property. Exodus 22:27. For that is his only covering, it is his cloak for his body. What else shall he sleep in? And it shall come about that when he cries out to me, I will hear him, for I am gracious. Hebrew versification 8:9-28. Because a more easy, exact, and impressive sense is obtained from the proper rendering. The word Alright, there. The word angel is a relative or official term is sometimes applied to a person of the Godhead, but the process is not reversed. The Septuagint indeed translates in several instances by angel a Psalm 8:6. You make him to rule over the works of your hands, you put all things under his feet. Psalm 97:7. Let those be ashamed who serve graven images, who boast themselves of idols. Worship him, all you gods. I will give you thanks with all my heart. I will sing praise to you before the gods. Psalm 138:1. The correctness of this is seemingly supported by the quotations in Hebrews 1:7. And when he again brings the firstborn into the world, he says, let all the angels of God worship him. In Hebrews 2:7. You have made him for a little while lower than the angels. You have crowned him with glory and honor, and you have appointed him over the works of your hands. These, however, do not imply that the renderings are absolutely correct, but only sufficiently so for the purposes of the writer. And it is evidently they are so because the original is a highly imaginative figure. Such a class is conceived to exist, of which in reality only one of the kind is or can be. Now the Septuagint, either imagining from the occasional application of the term angel to God that the angel does not. The Septuagint, either imagining from the occasional application of the official term angel to God that the angelic office somehow or sometimes involving the divine nature of viewing some of the false gods of the pagan Israeli angels, and therefore seeming wishing to give a literal turn to the figure, to substitute the word angel as an interpretation for Elohim. This free translation was sufficient for the purpose of the inspired author of the epistles to the Hebrews, inasmuch as the worship of all angels, Hebrews 1:6, and when he again brings the firstborn into the world, he says, and let all the angels of God worship him. And the Septuagintal sense of the term was that of the highest rank of dignitaries under God in the argument in the latter passage. Hebrews 2:7. You have made him for a little while lower than the angels. You have crowned him with glory and honor. You have appointed him over the works of your hands. It turns not on the words, thou madest him a little lower than the angels, but upon the sentence, thou hast put all things under his feet. Moreover, the Septuagint is by no means consistent in this rendering the word in similar passages. Psalm 82:1. God takes his stand in his own congregation. He judges in the midst of the rulers. Psalm 97:1. The Lord reigns. Let the earth rejoice. Let the many islands be glad. 1 Samuel 28:13. The king said, do not be afraid, but what do you see? And the woman said to Saul, I see a divine being coming up out of the earth. With regard to the use of the word, it is observed that the plural, the Chaldee form, is universally formally plural in sense. The English version of Elohim, the Son of God, Daniel 3:25, is the only exception to this. But since it is the phrase of a pagan, the real meaning may be a son of the gods. On the contrary, the plural of the Hebrew form is generally employed to denote the one true God. The singular form, when applied to the true God, is naturally suggested by the prominent thought of his being the only one. The plural, when so applied, is generally accompanied with singular conjuncts and conveys the predominant conception of a plurality in the one God, a plurality which must be perfectly consistent with his being the only possible one of his kind. The explanations of this use of the plural, namely that it is a relic of polytheism, that indicates the association of the angels with the one God in a common or collective appellation, that it expresses the multiplicity of attributes subsisting in him, are not satisfactory. All we can say is that it indicates such a plurality, and the only one God makes his nature complete and creation possible. Such a plurality and unity must have dawned upon the mind of Adam. As afterward we conceive definitely revealed in the doctrine of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Skies, heavens being the high Arabic area region, the overarching dome of space with all its revolving orbs. Land, earth, the low or the hard, the underlying surface of land. The verb is in its perfect form denoting a completed act. The adverbial note of time in the beginning determines it to belong to the past. To suit our idiom, it may therefore be strictly rendered had created. The skies and the land are the universe divided into its two natural parts by an earthly spectator. The absolute beginning of time and the creation of all things mutually determine each other. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, Genesis 1:1. This great introductory sentence of the book of God is equal in weight to the whole of its subsequent communications concerning the kingdom of nature. Genesis 1:1 assumes the existence of God, for it is he who in the beginning creates. It assumes his eternity, for he is before all things, and since nothing comes from nothing, he himself must always been. It applies to his omnipotence, for he created the universe of things. It applies to his absolute freedom, for he begins a new course of action. It implies his infinite wisdom, for a cosmos, an order of matter and mind, can only come from a being of absolute intelligence. It implies his essential goodness, for the soul, eternal, almighty, all-wise, and all-sufficient being, has no reason, motive, and no capacity for evil. It presumes him to be beyond all limit of time and place, since he is before all time and place. It asserts the creation of the heavens and the earth, that it is of the universe of mind and matter. This creating is the omnipotent act of giving existence to things which before had no existence. This is the first great mystery of things, as the end is the second. Natural science observes things as they are when they had already laid hold of existence. It ascends into the past as far as observation will reach, and penetrates into the future as far as experience will guide. But it does not touch the beginning or the end. This first sentence of Revelation, however, records the beginning. At the same time, it involves the progressive development of what is begun, and so contains within its bosom the whole of what is revealed in the book of God. It is thus historical of the beginning and prophetical of the whole of time. It is therefore equivalent to all the rest of Revelation taken together, which merely records the evolutions of one sphere of creation and nearly anticipates the end of present things. The sentence Genesis 1:1 assumes the being of God and asserts the beginning of things. Hence, it intimates that the existence of God is more immediately patent to the reason of man than to the creation of the universe. This is agreeable to the philosophy of things. The existence of God is a necessary and eternal truth, more and more self-evident to intellect as it rises to maturity. But the beginning of things is by its very nature a contingent event, which once was not and then came to be contingent on the free will of the eternal, and therefore not evident to reason itself, but made known to the understanding by testimony and the reality of things. This sentence is the testimony, and the actual world denouncing around us is the reality. Faith takes account of the one, observation of the other. It bears on the very face of it the indication that it was written by man and for man, for it divides all things into the heavens and the earth. Such a division evidently suits those only who are inhabitants of the earth. Accordingly, the sentence Genesis 1:1 is the foundation stone of the history not of the universe at large, of the sun or any other planet, but of the earth, and of man its rational inhabitant. The primeval event which it records may be far distant in point of time from the next event in such a history, as the earth may have existed myriads of ages, and undergone many vicissitudes in its conditions before it became the home of the human race. And for aught we know, the history of other planets, even of the solar system, may yet be unwritten, because there is yet no rational inhabitant to compose or peruse the record. We have no intimation of the interval of time that elapsed between the beginning of things narrated in this prefatory sentence and the state of things which is announced in the following verse, Genesis 1:2. The earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. With no less clearness, however, does it show that it is dictated by superhuman knowledge, for it records the beginning of things which natural science can take no cognizance. Man observes certain laws of nature, and guided by these may trace the current of physical events backward and forward, but without being able to fix any limit to the course of nature in either direction. And not only this sentence, but the main part of this in the following chapter communicates events that occurred before man made his appearance on the stage of things, and therefore he could either witness or record them. And in harmony with all this, the whole volume is proved by the topics chosen, the revelations made, the views entertained, the ends contemplated, the means of information possessed to be derived from a higher source than man. The simple sentence Genesis 1:1 denies atheism, for it assumes the beginning of God, denies polytheism, and among its various forms the doctrine of two eternal principles, the one good and the other evil, for it confesses the one eternal creator. It denies materialism, for it asserts the creation of matter. It denies pantheism, for it assumes the existence of God before all things that are apart from them. It denies fatalism, for it invokes the freedom of the eternal being. It indicates the relative superiority in point of magnitude of the heavens to the earth by giving the first by giving the former the first place in the order of words. It is thus in accordance with the first elements of astronomical science. It is therefore pregnant with physical and metaphysical, with ethical and theological instruction for the first man, for the predecessors and contemporaries of Moses, and for all the succeeding generations of mankind. This verse forms an integral part of the narrative and not a mere heading as some have imagined. This is abundantly evident from the following reasons. 1. It has the form of a narrative, not of a superscription. 2. The conjunctive particle connects the second verse with it, which could not be if it were a heading. 3. The very next sentence speaks of the earth as already in existence, and therefore its creation must be recorded in the first verse. In the first verse, the heavens take precedence of the earth, but in the following verses, all things, even the sun and the moon and the stars, seem to be but appendages to the earth. Thus, if it were a heading, it would not correspond with the narrative. 5. If the first verse belonged to the first narrative, order pervades the whole recital, whereas if it is a heading, the most hopeless confusion enters. Light is called into being before the sun, moon, and stars. The earth takes precedence of the heavenly luminaries. The stars, which are coordinate with the sun and preordinate to the moon, occupy the third place in the narrative of their manifestation. For any and all of these reasons, it is obvious that the first verse forms a part of the narrative. As soon as it is settled that the narrative begins with the first verse, another question comes up for determination, namely, whether the heavens here mean the heavenly bodies that circle in their courses through the realms of space, or the mere space itself which they occupy with their perambulations. It is manifest that the heavens here denote the heavenly orbs themselves, the celestial mansions with their existent inhabitants for the following cogent reasons. Creation implies something created and not mere space, which is nothing and cannot be said to be created. Since the earth here obviously means the substance of the planet we inhabit, so by parity of reason, the heavens must mean the substance of the celestial luminaries, the heavenly hosts of stars and spirits. The heavens are placed before the earth, and therefore must mean that reality which is greater than the earth, for if they meant space and nothing real, they ought not to be before the earth. The heavens are actually mentioned in the verse, and therefore must mean a real thing, for if they meant nothing at all, they ought not to be mentioned. The heavens must denote the heavenly realities, because this imparts a rational order to the whole chapter, whereas an unaccountable derangement appears if the sun, moon, and stars do not come into existence till the fourth day, though the sun is the center of light and measure of the daily period. For any or all these reasons, it is undeniable that the heavens in the first verse means the fixed and planetary orbs of space, and consequently that these unaccounted tenants of the skies, along with their own planet, are declared to be in existence before the commencement of the 6 days of creation. Hence it appears that the first verse records an event antecedent to those described in the subsequent verses. This is the absolute and aboriginal creation of the heavens and all that is in them, and of the earth in its primeval state. The former includes all those resplendent spheres which are spread before the wandering eye of man, as well as those hosts of planets and of spiritual and angelic beings which are beyond the range of his natural vision. This brings a simple, unforced meaning out of the whole chapter, and discloses a beauty and a harmony in the narrative which no other interpretation can afford. In this way, the subsequent verses reveal a new effort of creative power, by which the pre-Adamic earth, in the condition in which it appears in the second verse, is prepared for the residence of a fresh animal creation, including the human race. The process is represented as it would appear to primeval man in its infantile simplicity, with which his own position would naturally be the fixed point to which everything else was to be referred. Okay, so that's the end of the commentary for Genesis 1:1.